Le Mans, Daytona, Nürburgring. Since 1948, Porsche has won more than 400 major races here and abroad.
Great rivalries have defined history. Take the Cold War space race, two superpowers battling for the stars. Or think back to the 1980s, when Ferrari and Lamborghini clashed, creating legends like the F40 and the Countach. Some rivalries produce winners and losers. Others rewrite the rules entirely. The 1990s had its own legendary showdown. McLaren F1 versus Porsche 911 GT1.
Le Mans gereden van de visie McLaren.
McLaren F1 was a phenomenon, but Porsche wasn't about to let McLaren stay on top. So they crafted the 911 GT1, a car so dominant it reshaped the competition and dethroned the mighty F1. But this isn't your average story. The meet Ferdinand Porsche, he created Porsche kind of story. No, it goes way deeper than that. To truly understand how the 911 GT1 dethroned the McLaren F1, we need to go back to the roots of endurance racing itself. And that's where the World Sportscar Championship comes in. Perhaps a name that has not been heard in recent times, but for automobile companies in the 50s, this was the competition. It began in 1953 as a way to find the best car makers and drivers in endurance racing. Big names like Ferrari, Jaguar, Maserati, and Mercedes-Benz all battled for glory. In the late 50s, Ferrari reigned supreme, defining the era with their fast supercars. Mercedes, determined to challenge their dominance, entered the scene with the powerful 300 SLR, a car that seemed unstoppable. However, their journey was cut short after the tragic 1955 Le Mans crash, a disaster that claimed over 80 lives and forced Mercedes to withdraw from racing. Despite the dangers, the WSC grew. The 1970s brought fierce rivalries between Porsche's 917 and Ferrari's 512S. However, the rising speeds and costs forced rule changes, and fewer manufacturers stayed involved. In the 1980s, the championship was revamped with Group C cars that focused on fuel efficiency as well as speed. Porsche, Jaguar, and Sauber Mercedes shone in this era, creating some of the best racing in the series' history. During this period, something interesting was cooking at McLaren HQ. The chef, a man named Gordon Murray. The food, McLaren F1. His vision for the F1 came to life in 1988 when he sketched the idea after the Italian Grand Prix. He wanted to create the ultimate road car, inspired by Formula One technology. Murray had dreamed of a 3-seat sports car since he was young. As a chief engineer, he wanted the car to combine low weight with high power. He used advanced materials to achieve this. The F1 was the first production car to use a carbon fiber monocoque chassis, making it incredibly strong and light. Murray and his team set high goals for the car, even testing it against cars like the Honda NSX. Impressed by the NSX's smooth ride and handling, Murray aimed to make the F1 even better. At first, he asked Honda to build the F1's engine, but they turned him down. So, BMW stepped in and built a powerful V12 engine, which became one of the car's most impressive features. Before building the first F1 cars, McLaren used two kit cars, named Albert and Edward, to test components like the gearbox, engine, and brakes. Once testing was complete, the prototypes were destroyed to keep their design a secret. By the 1990s, however, the WSC was struggling. High costs, fewer competitors, and waning interest outside of Le Mans led to its downfall. Efforts to revive it with new rules only made things worse, and by 1992, the series was cancelled. But that didn't affect McLaren's plans for the F1 in any way. The McLaren F1 was officially unveiled on May 28, 1992 in Monaco. The production version remained close to the original prototype, with only small changes. After the World Sports Car Championship ended in 1992, international sports car racing seemed to vanish. All that remained were small national events or single-make series where nearly identical cars competed. Wanting to revive endurance racing, Patrick Peter and Stefan Rattel, who ran the Venturi series in France, teamed up with Jürgen Barth from Germany's Porsche series. Together, they planned to create an international championship that could bring endurance racing back to Europe and beyond. This new series was called the BPR Global GT Series. This new series will kickstart in 1994 with an 8-race schedule featuring events in Europe as well as Japan and China. These races lasted about 4 hours and included a mix of cars from various series. Early participants were mostly Porsches and Venturi models, but soon others joined, like the Ferrari F40, Lotus Esprit, and Callaway Corvette. By 1995, the series had grown to 12 races, and interest from manufacturers was growing fast. New supercars like the McLaren F1 GTR, Ferrari F40 GTE, and Jaguar XJ220 entered the competition, alongside smaller contenders like Porsche 911 GT2 and the Tommaso Pantera. The McLaren was especially prominent. In 1994, Autocar magazine called it the finest driving machine yet built for the public road, and predicted it would be remembered as one of the greatest cars in history. While it wasn't originally designed for racing, a modified version of the F1 won several races, including the prestigious 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1995, defeating cars built specifically for racing. The F1 received praise from car enthusiasts and critics alike. The McLaren F1s and Ferrari F40s dominated the BPR, while Porsche struggled to compete. Porsche wasn't happy about this. For Porsche, the automobile company wanted to get back into high-level racing and needed a car for the GT1 class. At first, they tried upgrading their existing 911 GT2 model to create a stronger racing version called the GT2 Evo. But this car couldn't compete well against other powerful racers, so they had to create a brand new car, the 911 GT1. Despite its name, the 911 GT1 had little in common with the regular Porsche 911. It only shared the headlights and taillights with the road car. The front part of the chassis was based on the 993 generation 911, but the back half was taken from Porsche's older race car, the 962C prototype. This gave the GT1 a unique combination of features. The car's engine was a 3.2-liter flat 6, which was cooled by water and had 2 turbochargers. It was placed in the middle of the car, not the back, like most 911s. The engine produced about 600 horsepower, making it far more powerful than the GT2, which only had an air-cooled engine with fewer advanced features. To compete in the GT1 racing category, Porsche had to meet a rule that required the creation of at least 25 road-legal versions of their race car. In response, Porsche developed 2 prototype cars in 1996 that could legally be driven on the road. The first of these prototypes was sent to the German Federal Ministry of Transport for testing. After passing all the required tests, it was confirmed to be fully road legal. The second prototype ended up with a private collector from Bahrain named Khalid Abdul Rahim. These 2 cars had 993-style headlights, which were the same as those used in the earlier generation of Porsche 911 models. The work had been done, and it was time for the 911 GT1 to finally show its might. The 911 GT1 debuted at the 1996 Le Mans 24 Hours, and quickly proved unbeatable at races in Brands, Hatch, Spa, and Shanghai. This caused tension with the BPR leadership. One of the organizers, Jürgen Barth, was also working for Porsche, creating a conflict of interest. Barth, a former factory driver who had tested the 911 GT1 himself, faced criticism from his co-organizers for allowing the car to compete. These disagreements, along with other challenges, made the future of the BPR uncertain. In the end, it was clear that the BPR had to evolve, and the FIA GT Championship was born. After the success of the Porsche 911 GT1 in 1996, McLaren quickly understood innovation was needed. The McLaren F1 needed an upgrade if it were going to stop the 911 GT1, and once again, Gordon Murray got to work. It wasn't until 1997 that the fruit of his labor was born, the McLaren F1 GTR Longtail. Sometimes you see a car and instantly know it's special. The Longtail wasn't just about performance. it was about style too. It was the final evolution of what many consider the greatest GT car ever built. For the 1998 racing season, Porsche created an all-new version called the 911 GT1 98, which looked and performed more like a sports prototype. This version had a new sequential gearbox for faster gear changes and advanced electronics for engine control. As the rules required, Porsche made a street-legal version of this car, though it is believed only one was ever produced. Porsche arrived at Le Mans in 1998 with a clear mission: to win. Their weapon of choice was the 911 GT1 98, a car built specifically for this legendary race. It had everything going for it: a carbon fiber chassis that made it light and nimble, a mid-mounted twin-turbo engine for power, and aerodynamics fine-tuned for speed and stability. The factory team entered 2 cars. The number 26 car was driven by Alan McNish, Stefano Ortelli, and Lauren Aiello, while Bob Wallach, Jörg Müller, and Uwe Alzen took charge of the number 25 car. From the start, the race looked like it might belong to Toyota. Their GT1 prototypes were the fastest cars on the track. As the hours rolled by, Toyota seemed unstoppable. But Le Mans is never just about speed. It's a test of endurance, a challenge to see which team can keep their car running for 24 grueling hours. And that's where Toyota faltered. Their cars were plagued by gearbox issues. One by one, they fell away, leaving just a single Toyota in the fight. But with less than 2 hours left on the clock, that last car also broke down, shattering their hopes of victory. Porsche, meanwhile, had its own struggles. The number 26 car ran into cooling system trouble midway through the race, forcing the team to make quick repairs. Despite the scare, they kept their cool, sticking to their strategy that kept the car in the hunt. As the race entered its final stretch, Porsche's reliability began to shine. The number 26 car held steady, crossing the finish line first. The number 25 car followed closely behind, giving Porsche an impressive 1-2 finish. Toyota, after all their heartbreak, managed to secure 3rd place, leaving the McLaren F1 GTR in 4th place. After the 1998 24-hour of Le Mans, the McLaren F1 GTR could no longer compete against GT1 cars like the Porsche 911 GT1 and Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR. It struggled to keep up with the advancements in aerodynamics, engine performance, and overall design of cars specifically engineered for GT racing. By 1999, the FIA GT Championship underwent regulation changes that effectively ended the GT1 category. McLaren eventually retired the F1 GTR from competitive racing. Even though the F1 GTR was defeated, it remained a legend in racing history, known for its earlier victories. The Porsche 911 GT1, however, became the car that defined a new chapter in motorsport. Race cars rising and falling from glory is a story as old as motorsport itself. One example you might find interesting is the tale of the M3 GTR, the car that famously killed Porsche. Click on the video on your screen now.